2 gaming the system. It's been a while, I think, since we've done a gaming the system video. But
when was the last one? Because I'd like to say we did one relatively recently.
Did we do one relatively recently? I don't know. The release schedule will make it long ago anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, no, it was the Tsukahime video.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, and that did come out. All right. So yeah. So we're back again. We're back with our good friends Extra Credits because they've had another hot take.
We're going to learn about fantasy racism today.
Yeah, we're going to learn about racism. It's going to be a fun...
Naratsu, Ellie, I just have to ask you guys. Do orc lives matter?
Yes, orc lives do in fact matter. How dare you suggest
My campaign heavily features orc in a balanced, more kind of Viking raider-y kind of way. However... my players keep trying to kill them, and it's kind of annoying.
Well, if you don't trust Vikings, you give them an inch, they'll just do a fucking Norman invasion on your ass.
Yeah.
Change your language and everything, it'll be really awful.
So yeah, we're going to be covering a very hot button issue, the issue of evil races are bad game design, which is an interesting title. I'm interested to see where they go with this. I haven't watched this video yet. Like, I've seen some clips, but I haven't watched the whole thing. So I am kind of fascinated.
I'm willing to go into it, like, outside of the very obvious baiting, that they're trying to do. I'm willing to go into this just from a, actual design perspective of, okay, well, what's their argument here as to how this relates to game design?
I agree. I'm actually kind of curious, so I guess we'll jump right into it.
During 2019 and 2020, you might have noticed a reoccurring argument about some species from fantasy media, specifically orcs. Now, not to worry. This episode isn't going to be just another member of the chorus talking about how if all orcs in a game are blindly evil, that it's racist. Instead, we want to discuss how that particular choice is simply bad game design.
Okay.
That needs some heavy lifting, heavy arguing.
Yeah,
they already poisoned the well by more or less being like, yeah, no, it's probably racist though.
Yeah, I mean, you're already working under the assumption that orcs are black people, which is an already bit of a problem.
Hey, they haven't said that yet.
They haven't said it yet, but I'm just saying, like. They didn't deny it. They were like, they didn't deny it. So yeah, let's keep going.
Thanks so much to NordVPN for
oh god.
your internet security. Get a huge discount on a 2-year plan and get
NordVPN.
Inward VPN.
Real quick up top, please welcome James Mendez-Hose, who guest wrote this episode. Thanks so much, Mendez. Much of the recent conversation on orcs points out that characterizing a whole species in your game
that name sounds familiar.
And malevolent might be harmful to real-world groups regularly mischaracterized.
There's no lead up at all.
Wow, I didn't expect it right out the damn gate.
Just look at this image.
Keep going.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I wonder how quick this episode's gonna be because, it's all front loaded right here.
I just needed a moment to take that in. Okay. Let's keep going.
As ugly, warlike, and malevolent. However, this video isn't that. Though if you want more on that discussion, Mendez breaks it down wonderfully over on his website, and we'll have a link to that in the description. But here, we're going to talk about something related. Why characterizing a group like this in your game can be lazy at best, and at worst, actively harmful to the world you're creating.
Okay.
When designing a game and populating it with fictional species,
you got a problem?
designer might be tempted.
Yeah, Ali, you got something to
say?
Well,
what you gonna say?
It's so broad strokes. I'd say even broader than designating a particular thing as evil or good, or demons are bad. Oh, that's such a broad stroke. You shouldn't do it. Well, what if I need just a malevolent force in the world that seeks to destroy it for their own gains, for their own short-term goals? That- I
yeah,
mean, like I
my
said,
problem, sorry,
like I said, my orcs are Viking raiders with their reasons and their own little culture that I made up for my that I made up. They have their reasons for raiding, and it's kind of, it's not maybe sympathetic because they're doing it in a more like, raiding, beating your
Well,
chest kind of way.
well, let's be real. Like, actual Vikings were also doing raiding for their own reasons as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
They had the cultural reason to actually go out and do invasions and conquering that was tied to their folklore, that was tied to their pagan religion. They had actual motivation to do that. The thing is that here's kind of the problem. We're taking the very generic either Dungeons and Dragons or Tolkien idea of an orc, and in both of those cases, more in the Tolkien case. In the Tolkien case, they were often more like a force of nature. They were more like a tide, and they weren't really represented necessarily as a group of people. The most you could say is that he probably, he did get the idea from the Golden Horde's invasion of Europe, which, from a European perspective, that was a massive, destructive, foreign, and malevolent force. Let's not mince words. The Mongolians and the Genghis Khan were not, by today's standards, would be considered pretty fucked up people.
Right.
But fucked up.
So yeah, we haven't gotten yet into the meat of it. So I'm kind of interested to see where they're going to go with this. But we've established the premise of Extra Credits believes that having these sort of broad good evil whatever is apparently bad game design
and will destroy your game world.
Yeah, but I'm kind of
the
like,
thing is that game design and world building, while they kind of can go hand in hand, aren't coupled with each other. Like they can be separate from one another.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep going. Let's see what they have to say.
To differentiate them from one another by certain inalienable qualities, like their moral alignment, violent versus peaceful, law versus chaos, good versus evil, and the like. It's a common trope in speculative fiction, but especially in the context of a game, painting an entire species with the same moral brush actually weakens the entire thing. This
Okay.
idea that a certain subgroup, like race, nationality, or sex, has inalienable traits, is called biological essentialism, or simply bioessentialism.
Okay.
This is
So-
some heavy mixing of real life problems and fantasy settings.
Yeah, fantasy game design. Like,
Yeah.
this is kind of the idea of it ain't that deep, bro. Like,
Yeah, I don't see it, right? Like, I don't, because this is my big problem. My big hang up is, like, when I look at, like, fantasy races, I don't actually see, like, a real world equivalent. Like, if I look at
depends
elves
on the
or-
setting. Like, if this
Yeah.
was, like, say, Shadowrun, yeah, there's absolutely some form of biological essentialism element there. Because in Shadowrun, they are straight up just characterized as being, urban TM. They even have their equivalent of, like, the Rodney King riots in universe. It ain't subtle at all.
Right.
And it's also kind of bizarre of a choice to make in Shadowrun because orcs straight up, in terms of stats, actually start with lower intelligence and can't get above a certain thing. So
Yeah.
no matter how much they hand-wring over, hey, orc metahumans can be just as good as everyone else, the actual mechanics say something else about intelligence, and the fact that they relate their struggles to, like, real-world struggles of African Americans is kind of fucked up.
So,
But
and
as
that's
we've
a
seen
problem.
from this video, because let's face it, Shadowrun's devs are left wing. As we can see from this video, lefties trying to handle these types of concepts are really fucking clumsy about it.
Yeah, and that's a big problem because, again, from my perspective, it's like I just don't like in general, like when I'm we lost Elio or someone. We'll just keep going and we'll wait for him to come back. In general, I don't particularly. How do I put this? It's like when I generally think about these races, right? When I generally think about elves and orcs and goblins and all these kinds of like fantasy type races, I'm never never in my life until now have I ever really considered like, oh, these are just like these other people in real life that I know. Right?
Well, that doesn't really excuse or confirm or deny anything because.
Well, I'm just saying that, like, from my layman's perspective, it's never been a thought that's occurred to me, right? It's never been a thought that, hey, I'm looking at an orc in like Skyrim or something, right? I've never been like, man, these orcs remind me of black people, like. Really, really remind me of black people. Like, totally.
I think
I've never had like that moment, and I'm really like weirded out by the fact that there are human beings that have had that moment. Apparently, like I don't get where it comes from.
Well,
I'm sorry.
If you want to pick a game or a setting where orcs are like black people, I think the Elder Scrolls comes pretty close to it, though.
No,
I wouldn't say that with the Elder Scrolls. If you would have said the Khajiit and would have said Arabs or Ethiopian traders, I would agree with you because that is actually what we're based off of.
Yeah, that's a much better example.
But also, orcs are also discriminated because they have they are what they are, etc., etc.
Well, that's not.
But
we're not. Hang on, because I think there's a disconnect here. Because we're not talking about like how they're discriminated against and how that relates to like the struggles of black people. I'm talking about like the physical characteristics and the culture of these species.
Oh yeah,
like, I'm not talking like if you want to say orcs in Skyrim or Elder Scrolls or whatever are like black people because of how they're discriminated against within like the game, like the world and the setting, that's one thing. But we're talking right now in this video about bioessentialism, which is not really talking about like the way in which the culture reacts to these characters yet. I'm guessing we're going to get to it. But
bioessentialism is like what he described is painting.
He'll probably describe it for us, so we should probably continue.
All right.
True. But to cap this off, though, right? My issue when it comes to Elder Scrolls is I actually agree with Lolly. I think that if you were going to make an example of a fictional race within that setting that relates to something, the Khajiit are definitely based off like Arab societies and nomadic
Silk Road traders.
Silk Road trader type stuff. So like there's clearly some like references there, but let's hear what Extra Credits is going to explain what bioessentialism is to us.
And it's a valid way to talk about qualities like how many legs an animal has or whether it can fly. But all too often, this concept gets misused in untrue statements, like pit bulls are a violent breed, men are more logical than women, or Asians are better at math. Now chances
or that females have more empathy than men.
Yeah, that's the other thing that would go around. Well, that's not necessarily true. There is actual evidence in psychiatric and neurological fields that are like, the brains of men are typically more
logical,
more oriented towards spatial. I want to say logical, but spatial thinking is how I would say.
Spatial thinking.
It's the good old. The differences within the group are greater than the differences between the groups. Like half of the women are more logical thinking than half of the men, but all of the men.
That doesn't mean that everyone's like that.
Yeah,
I mean, no, I'm not saying that everyone's
like
that. I'm just saying.
No. I know you're not.
If you actually look at studies and statistics, you actually get painted a very stark picture on the differences in the levels of empathy and spatial thinking between men and women. Women are just naturally better at empathy because, that is an evolutionary thing.
I would still say it's a little bit sexist to just flat out say that men lack empathy. But that is
on some level a thing, men do actually score lower on empathy tests because how males communicate is fundamentally different.
I'm getting ahead of myself for something else. But
You're getting very ahead of
I
yourself.
have no idea what you're talking about.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't
all
matter.
these
But-
all
but-
these men women thing whatever is
Also,
all like
pit bulls are perfectly safe species. Just ask the faces of all the toddlers.
So so that's an interesting one because it's like, when it comes to dog breeding, it's actually really interesting because there are definitely dog breeds that are bred in such a way to increase aggression because
That's why we have so many variations, because they all come from one specific group of animal and were bred over time for specific roles.
Yeah, so
That is
I know
an actual fact of the matter.
So I know why he's using that example because it's a known one, but it's not
because
really
he
a good
thinks
one.
black people are dogs, probably.
Oh
That's
God,
gonna be
God,
my
fucking
assumption.
hell! Fucking hell!
well, fun fact, dogs are less genetically varied than cats, even though they vary so much in size and shape and attitude.
Yeah,
But that's also because the genes of dogs have such a more drastic effect on everything. If you just take away 2 genes or change 2 genes, the dog gets 4 times as big. Well, for a cat, you need like 100 genes before it changes its size.
Yeah, it's
which
interesting.
is weird.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
weird that he would actually bring up pit bulls as not being more aggressive because they were straight up they were straight up bred to be fighting dogs. That is the origin of their species. Pit.
Yeah,
Fight
they would-
pits.
yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like now you could make the argument that over time those traits could be bred out of them over time. Right?
Yeah.
And you could say that, but I think that at this point in time to say, oh no, pit bulls being more aggressive is just like is bioessentialism being applied incorrectly. I think that's wrong. I think that's like that is literally bioessentialism being applied correctly because pit bulls are technically more aggressive than other breeds of dogs because that was specifically why they were created. You know.
Also, since we're talking about tropes here, I'm just gonna say it. TV tropes has ruined an entire generation
Yeah.
of writers.
Yeah.
And also, just
let's-
for reference, if you want to change anything in a human, intelligence, height, size, or whatever, you need to change like 1,000 genes before anything happens
Yeah,
most
'cause
of the
we've-
time.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going.
Are, if a game is set in the real world, that the designers are avoiding these tropes because they aren't real, as multiple fields of societal and hard science can readily prove to you. But speculative fiction offers us an opportunity to reify or make real various things which don't exist, or to exaggerate things which do. Now, bioessentialism is a tempting idea in fantasy for some of the same reasons as it is in the real world. Because to our human minds, broad generalizations are comforting. They reduce the world to simple cut and dry categories. All orcs bad, all elves good, root for these folks, not for these folks. But just like in the real world, bioessentialism can present problems in fiction as well, specifically a moral one. The idea that a sapient species can inherently tend towards good or evil.
Who's to say orcs are sapient in a Pacific setting? Like, not all settings are the same.
And
Like,
especially,
he's countering ignorant generalized statements by making a ignorant generalized statement.
statement.
because
yeah, it's
now
very bad.
D&D is like the most flexible of anything at all. If I want my orcs to be even more brainless, a force of savage nature, then I can, with one stroke of my pen, one thought of my mind, my orcs are mindless and lower than animals.
I know this might be getting a bit ahead of the video, but like, because I know for a fact they're probably going to bring up 40k at some point. But if you look at the orcs in 40k, the way that they're designed
They're
to
soccer
be,
hooligans.
well, no, it's not even like biologically they are plants, right?
I
Like,
mean,
straight up.
just getting away from the bioessentialism argument, because let's be honest, that's a massive red herring here.
Oh
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
think it really fits anything that he says so far.
It doesn't fit because, especially in fantasy settings, a lot of what's derived from, or a lot of the aspects that are derived isn't biological; it's metaphysical. The orcs aren't, in Tolkien, aren't evil because of biology. They were straight up cursed. They were elves that were cursed.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And then of course in 40k you have the fact that they were. I'm pretty sure they were designed to be a weapon, right? Like the orcs
Yeah,
were made to
like
be a weapon,
there was some.
and they were. Yeah, there was like
I actually know how to.
All right,
talk
the
about
short
this 'cause I'm
version.
Yeah,
actually
yeah. I'll let
interested.
Lolly do it. I'll let
So-
Lolly do the short version because I
Okay,
don't want to get into 40k lore too deep.
Yeah. So the long story short is that in the war between the Old Ones and the Star Gods, they developed the Eldar as an initial race for soldiers, and then they were going to develop the Gorks or the Groks, or I forget the exact name, but they fucked up and they were never completed. So the Orcs are basically an incomplete weapons experiment.
Yeah. That are plant based and reproduce.
Somebody
via
will probably
spores.
yell at me for being
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
So,
You'll be
you
wrong,
know.
but
No,
they
you
but
don't
they
men-
reproduce.
You didn't mention like that they shattered into shards at the end.
Yeah, nobody gives a
Yeah,
shit.
no one goes. Okay. But
Greg
my
goes
main
fast.
point. My main point is that the orcs in 40k specifically are they're less sentient, right? Than I would say most races, because let's be real, they are just plants that have been programmed in a specific way.
They get smarter when they group together.
Yeah, but that's because they've been that's how they're programmed, right?
That's how the
That's
wall
part-
works.
Yeah. It's all part of like the fucking it's just part of the setting, right? So
Yeah.
to make the generalization here that
But they haven't made that
Ancient Credits
argument
is
yet,
doing,
so we're
yeah.
actually getting way the fuck ahead of ourselves.
Well, a little bit.
And
but
if
I
they
wanted to, yeah.
brought that up, you should have just waited till later.
Well, I don't know if they bring it up in that respect. I wanted to bring it up in the respect of what they're talking about right now, as an example of an example of orcs that are not necessarily sentient. Because would you consider the orcs to be sentient if they are technically just they have personalities and they are somewhat
Yeah,
intelligent?
Well, yeah, in 40k especially, they are sentient. They have thoughts and feelings,
Alright.
even though they mostly revolve around punching people. They can still be sad when there's
Alright,
nobody to
alright.
punch.
They can solve their
'cause I-
feelings,
'cause-
hurt.
All
Remember
right,
in Dawn of War 2, the commando unit, you end up finding him passed out next to some lava because he tried to blend in with it. And your character, because you're playing as a freebooter, calls him a moron, and he just responds all dejected that the boss hurt his feelings.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong then, and I'm just going off on random tangents. But anyway, let's keep going.
Acts, or lawful or chaotic ones. And that moral essentialism actually undercuts the greatest strength games can bring to storytelling. The player's own power to make meaningful, interesting choices and judgments for their characters,
Pause.
including moral ones.
Does he want to play a D&D game?
Well, yeah, no, he's talking about wanting to play a tabletop game, but the fact of the matter is that not all games are designed with the idea that they want to have the players make more difficult moral choices. They don't need to be designed that way. Some games just have a vastly different focus, right?
Yeah.
Also, most of the actual moral problems that I see in a lot of Western RPGs, and BioWare is specifically guilty of this, doesn't have to do with the races. It comes down to all choices being either you're Jesus, you're Hitler, or you're just apathetic.
Yeah, and it's you don't. Not every game has to be some fucking existential moral crisis, right? Like sometimes I just want to sit down and do some fucking raiding
Also, the purpose
or
of a
something.
game isn't to make meaningful choices. It's the purpose of a game is to have fun, it's to be entertained.
Yeah, it's to
Actually
entertain,
shove off
yeah.
with that pretentious
and
bullshit.
to have some moral choices and stuff within a game that kind of makes you stop and think a little bit. Sometimes that can be entertaining. Sometimes it can be entertaining to think about those things, but it doesn't have to be all the time. And I feel like a lot of quote unquote lefties, right? So, I feel like a lot of them tend to. I don't know why, but they have this idea that no, everything has to have a message. Everything has to push this idea.
Well,
Well,
the
if it pushes-
everything has to have a message, so as long as they agree with it. And I wouldn't even necessarily say that that's a lefty thing. That's a universal thing.
Oh yeah, no,
And
I
in
think
neither
right. I
cases,
think right
it's really
too,
fucking
yeah.
Yeah, can I give my I don't know, this is one example that I'm forever kind of annoyed with BioWare with.
Yeah.
Is that like in Mass Effect 2, there's a scene where you and Garrus are up on some roof in the Citadel, I believe. And
Oh, is this what I think it is?
And
'Cause I
they-
might know what you're talking about.
and then something flies up or it gets thrown up, and then you have to shoot it, and that Garrus and Shepard bond a little bit, etc. There's like an option if you will hit it or let Garrus hit it. And that choice is a Paragon or Renegade choice.
What?
I think I know the part you're talking about.
And
So,
then
like,
I took from, well, Shepard is kind of like a overconfident guy, right? You know, it's Renegade. I'm playing Paragon all the way, but you know, let Shepard have the shot for once or whatever. Then I took Renegade, and Shepard took the shot, and he won. And the guy was like, are you whatever? Kind of weird that he blamed, you know, because he didn't get the shot. That's Shepard's fault. Whatever. Fast forward to the end. I couldn't get my Paragon ending because I took that one shot.
God, yeah, that shit can be really annoying. No, I understand because I played a lot of Mass Effect back in the day, so yeah, I know what you're talking about. But anyway,
Yeah, that's the real moral quandary of a game like that.
yeah. All right, let's keep going.
So if a game's creative choices apply a moral valuation to every member of an entire species before the players even meet them, well, now that's just taking that power away from the players. And in turn, if a group of orcs, for instance, doesn't even have a choice about their actions, are they actually evil? Because
Okay.
It's very.
Here we go again.
This is a very broad society perspective and living in society things.
Also, here's the thing, right? Players still have that choice, right? The DM can present these characters, like these races, as being evil, but that doesn't mean the players have to go along with it.
Yeah, like
Look,
the reverse
because
is
of
my.
because of my heritage and of my nature, I had no choice but to rape all the women in that village. Okay, I'm not evil here. I'm not at fault. That's not a bad action.
Look,
It's
just
my
part of
culture.
yeah, it's just my culture, guys. Like, come on.
Yeah,
I
no.
also think that he doesn't also. Well, I said a bunch
He's
of things.
also focusing on the orc thing, right? Rather than like, okay, imagine if you're in a setting that extended this to like all races.
Well,
Like,
he
they
extended
showed
it to slimes, but slimes are most of the time not portrayed as sentient at all,
Yeah, they're portrayed more like wild animals.
or pests.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like, insects would probably be the best way to put it. Like,
I mean, it's kind of superficial from like, you know, the direction of, you know, extra credits here, because, you know, they're assuming that just because something looks like it's human means that clearly it has a higher moral value. So clearly this is more about orcs and less about slimes, those sticky, degenerate slimes.
Yeah, and it's...
I also do
God,
think that he isn't exclusively talking about tabletop, like that games like Shadow of Mordor should have like options for orcs to be good or something.
Which doesn't
Yeah,
make
but-
sense.
No,
doesn't-
it doesn't.
yeah.
It feels
But
like
it's-
that.
Yeah, but it's weird, because it's like, just because something's...
You know
like,
what they did with Shadow of Mordor
Yeah.
that actually made your decisions matter, that wasn't a moral one? They had the fucking Nemesis system.
Yeah, and that shit was really good. Especially, have you seen the video of the guy who kept disgracing the orc constantly to the point he becomes like a bumbling, like, dumb... Because okay, so I guess I don't want to get too deep into it, but the way that system worked was when you defeated an orc, you had a choice. You could either convert them to your army, you could kill them, or you could, like, disgrace them, and that would de-level the orc and make them, like, a lower level, right? So you'd essentially, like, strip the power and, like, the renown from them, right? Basically. And if you did that enough times to an orc, they just start getting, like, more and more and more desperate to the point, like, because they're losing honor and stuff in their status, right? And they just start literally pleading with you it actually gets really kind of crazy. But if you keep doing it and doing it and doing it, it also lowers their intelligence somehow, and you end up with this like guy who literally can only speak in grunts and like pained noises.
You know what
And
you're pointing out here, though, right? So is that even in settings where you have a race that is, defined by the metaphysics of the setting, by the morality of the setting as being evil, you can still have actual moral choices there. You can still actually have depth.
Yeah, because that is a moral choice. Like, you have the moral choice. Hey, do I kill this orc because killing him would, like, lower the strength of the army quite significantly because he's a high-powered orc? Or do I convert him to my side because then I would have a strong warrior for my own team?
Yeah.
Or do I not kill him and just strip him of his power?
Or do I kill him because
do
I kill him because he's a slaver type? And
Yeah.
I don't tolerate slavers in my army.
I don't tolerate that. Yeah, exactly. So you do still have those moral choices.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say that the universe or the game is any less deep for having that. It all depends on how you present it.
Yeah, it's all contextual. Yeah. So
This all comes down to presentation.
All right. Well, let's keep going.
If a person, say, destroys a house, we call that evil because they chose to do so. But if a tornado destroys a house, well, I mean, is wind evil? No. Therefore, if a game's world building chooses to program every member of a species to destroy,
I don't know.
Junji-
I don't know if a tornado blew through your town and killed like half the people in the town, including your wife and kids. I think you'd probably consider that like you.
Well, I could. I would
like. I get
just
what he's.
say.
Oh, hang on. Let me finish. I get what he's trying to say, right? Because it's a force of nature, and it's not like doing it deliberately to someone, right? To like it's not. It isn't evil in that moral sense, right? Because it's a force of nature. But to the person that action affected, right? Yeah, I would say that there'd be a level of thinking that was like bad and evil, right? Like to the person who now has to like grieve for their loved ones and stuff. Like if we're gonna use orcs as an example, right? You're in a village, right? And all of a sudden the orcs come rolling into your village and they start raping and pillaging and stealing all your women
Doing all
and
that
burning,
type of base shit.
burning all your houses down.
The base green
and
skins.
then they leave and you're still alive. Yeah, you're gonna think that they're evil. Like, it doesn't matter if, like, oh, maybe some orcs are not evil, or maybe some orcs are like, no, like noble, or whatever. No, if you were in a setting in a world and a group of orcs just came rolling the fuck in and doing all that stuff, yeah, you're gonna think that they're evil, and then word of that attack is going to spread, and people are gonna go, look.
Okay, you have to
orcs.
understand, they only rolled through that village because the wizard enforcer mistook their magic missile staff for their electrocution stun staff.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that Junji Ito would very much disagree that the wind can't be evil.
Yeah.
Also,
But
if a programmer put in, well, they say programmer, this is more the world building. The world building put in a race as being all evil and had an actual reason for that. Case in point, orcs and Tolkien, they were cursed, right?
Yeah.
They aren't evil, or how would I put this? It's not like a force of wind. It's more like they are a force as dictated by a god. So in that case, they would actually be more akin to the wind, because they are not, in fact, sapient, and then there's no real problem with that. Because they're not acting of their own will or their own volition. They're acting of the volition of
someone that is
of something greater in the setting.
Yeah.
In which case, you would apply the moral standard to the person who did that curse, assuming that these people didn't deserve the curse for some sort of weird pseudo-political or biblical reason.
Nonsense, yeah.
I would kind of more compare them to like insects more, because insects do have a thing. Insects, as small as it is, do have a thinking mind and do kind of make a decision where to go left or right at times. But you wouldn't call insects evil necessarily, but they are choosing to go your way for reasons that are nefarious to you and corrupting, etc.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to my point. It's like, you know, like to the person that the event or the thing is affecting, right? Yeah, you'd probably say that it was an evil act, right? Really, like to some extent, because it affected you in a negative way. But yeah, let's keep going.
Aren't they more like the tornado? Now, if the player's characters are able to make moral choices, but an entire class of NPCs is inherently evil regardless of their choice, then the game is either telling the player that moral choices don't matter, or it's simply driving a wedge between the player's morality and the morality that applies to the rest of the world, blocking the player from further becoming a part of it.
Do they want every JRPG to be like fucking Undertale?
Yeah. I'm starting to see that now, where it's like, because Undertale.
Imagine you're strolling up to a slime with its goofy ass grin on its face, which I'll admit is very cute. I love the fucking slimes and Dragon's Quest. Just strolling up,
cute, yeah.
And you're walking up, and you know, they clearly have like skeletons inside them. Like the ones that they walked up to were shown to have human skeletons inside of them. You're not going to be thinking, "Oh yeah, I want to befriend this thing."
Oh yeah, I'm gonna hug it.
Yeah, I mean, you should hug it.
But this is what I mean. It's weird because it's almost like they want everything to just be like this kind of like every decision you make has to have this enormous amount of weight to it. You know, like I don't want to be thinking
depending
about that
on the
shit.
game design, that's not even really tenable. Imagine having to balance that with like stat or resource management.
Yeah, I don't get a real, still don't have a real good feel if he really, because everything that's described in the video so far really only can be applied to tabletop. But here in this image, it's somebody holding a controller looking at the screen.
Yeah,
so what?
Which brings up another aspect that you'll have to take into consideration this development time, right? Like, a good example, actually, Deus Ex, right? You were supposed to have this entire alternate route where you stayed with UNATCO and worked within the system against Tracer Tong and the people trying to overthrow Bob Page, right? Like all of that plot, right? And that had, like, you actually can still see that, you know, you can actually trigger some of the dialogue that would have sent you down that path in the game's code. And that was supposed to be this entire second half of the game, but all that had to be scrapped because of development time, right? And this is also another thing. When you apply this type of depth to everybody, you can only really be as wide as an ocean and as shallow as a pool, because it becomes untenable to create an intricate moral decision for every single enemy and have it be significant to the overall game structure.
And another thing, because you brought up Undertale, right? Like, the reason Undertale works is because it is the exception to the rule, right? It works because like it was specifically set out to be an exception to the rule. He designed it in such a way.
But the game isn't that deep. Like, as an actual game, rather than a storytelling vehicle, it's actually not that deep. Because the focus had to be on the moral decisions you're making.
Yeah. So not all games, like, and that's the problem, right? Not all games can be Undertale. But, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean, like, Undertale is, I mean, I guess, you know, qualitative statements about good or bad or whatever, but, like, it doesn't necessarily make Undertale bad, in quotation marks.
Well,
but
Undertale is very creative in his restrictions with his black and white combat screen that double functions as etc. and actions you take and whatnot. And although the act and what you say in response is kind of basic, you know, just 1 out of 4 is correct. You have like a 50% if you kind of guess the personality of the monster you're facing. And it's very creative in the attacks that it does, but if you're going to be mean, it's also packaged in a real basic way, and if you stipulate all the routes out, they're only like is free with free variations in each, depending on where you stop or where you start or stop killing more or less.
Yeah. So that's the thing, but the problem is obviously like Undertale was set out from the get-go to be that, and was designed from the get-go to be that, and not every game it's like Lolly said, it's not tenable. It's just not tenable to expect that of every single game that comes out, to have this level of like moral nonsense to it. So yeah, let's keep going.
For instance, in Warhammer 40k,
Oh,
this
God.
inconsistency is central to the Imperium of Man's villainous creed. Individuals' human choices make them good or evil, whereas aliens are created evil. And of course, Games
Huh?
Workshop made that choice.
No.
What?
No!
What? What? What the fuck are
No!
you talking
Okay,
about?
so now we're actually gonna get into 40k.
Yeah, here we go.
So
Let's go.
there isn't an actual judgment. Okay, humans are blessed in that setting not because of a moral system declaring themselves to be good, but because of their belief in the Emperor has a tangible effect on the warp that can be reflected in reality. That is how things like sanctified bolters and stuff like that happen. Secondly, man, this really is the person who would try to negotiate with a Necron. That's funny as fuck.
The problem with using 40k in this example is
Everybody is a dick.
everybody's a dick.
That's
literally
the point of the
everyone is a dick. Yeah, it's not. There's literally no like the humans do fucked shit all the fucking time. Lots of fucked shit.
1,000
It's not-
souls a day for the Emperor. Throw them
literally,
all.
literally burning planets to the ground because there might be a slight heretic influence on the planet, right? Like literally.
Yeah, no, they do. They depending on who it is, they do a bunch of inhuman shit, but that's justified by the Imperial Creed. But it's never really portrayed as good. It's just the most you'll say is that sometimes it'll be portrayed as necessary, because when there's something like a demonic infestation happening, you're having to think, if this gets off the planet, my god, it could eat up how many other systems. That's the inherent horror of the setting, is that the scope of it can justify monstrous acts.
You can't fucking look at 40k under this lens of good
Also,
and evil.
yeah, most of the Necron are unfeeling because of a fucking curse they had. But yeah, almost all of the ones at the head are at the very least alien in mindset, and don't mind stripping your ass and turning you into a fucking human Necron hybrid if they can field you as a soldier. Like that's the thing about 40k.
And then you have like other races, like the Tau, which have got their own shady shit going on, from what I understand.
They have their own
stuff.
The Tau are as a species, are actually shown as being good in nature, good in their terms of like what their objectives are, but the way they achieve that is through lying to their populace, manipulation of outside information, and subversion of foreign populations. People often like to say that the Tau are communists. When you actually look at their actual doctrine, it's gunboat diplomacy. I almost said gunboat diplomacy.
Yeah. It's very it's weird.
And even
Now
the
in 40K.
orcs, you could say, well, they just want a good fight. They just want a good time.
Yeah.
The orcs are very uncaring about how much pain you go through, because it's just funny to them.
At the same time, he brings up the orcs. Somebody I forget the name of the guy in the first Dawn of War game, specifically remarks that he prefers fighting orcs because they won't stab you in the back. There's a sense of honor in their brutality.
But
so
but when they get you, they won't. They'll kill you slowly because it's funny to them.
most of the time they'll just they're in for a good fight. If you're not there
Yeah.
for a good fight, they'll just toss you to the side. Killing you slowly is what the Dark Eldar do.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
killing you relatively slowly. If you make a funny scream, they'll make you do it again.
See,
Well, that is funny.
but you see, this is the thing, right? Like, yeah, it's the difference between slowly and relatively slowly. That's what
Besides-
40k. That's what 40k literally is. It's like, okay, you're gonna die. Do you want to die slowly or relatively slowly?
Or by the millions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to die laying down or standing on your knees or standing
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, you got a choice, right? It's a great choice.
Besides,
it's a
the
great
only-
moral choice.
The most morally correct race in the setting are the Tyranids, and we all know that.
Oh, yeah.
it's
Just
fucking
hunger.
hilarious, yeah. Well, not even that. Like, isn't there reference that because I believe the Tyranids come from deep space. And
That's all
supposedly-
speculation, and it's mostly
Oh,
Arch
it's all
talking out of his ass.
Okay, well that's fine then. I was gonna say there is that speculation, but it doesn't matter.
Let's keep going before we get sucked
yeah.
into 40k lore.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we'll be here for the next 5 hours talking.
Who's
about
your
40K
favorite
lore.
legion?
No, stop, Ellie. You don't want this. You have to. Do you want to ever sleep again? But anyway, let's keep
facilitate a
going.
war game where lethal
My
violence
lords.
is the only option. But then folks also saw that in the 40k novels and RPGs, which required more interesting narrative complexities, Imperial heroes have to grapple with and recognize the illogic of that creed based on their own experience. Okay, but now you might be asking,
Okay,
what if
point
you're
to
playing a
examples.
game where
Yeah, he didn't point to any examples of that, and I haven't read a lot of the 40k novels. I know a lot
Also,
about them, but...
that's implied in the text that the decisions that they're making are morally kind of iffy. You know, when you look at anything the Inquisition is doing,
yeah,
they're not saying
yeah.
that they're not being cruel. They're saying that they're literally saying there's only degrees of guilt. There is no innocence.
Yeah,
Also, I assure you that in those books featuring Necrons, the Necrons aren't portrayed as good either.
They're only portrayed as being aligned with humanity when the Necron Lord in charge wants something or sees a greater threat. They're not unreasonable. You know, Trazyn allied with humanity and the Eldar at Cadia, not because they wanted to save the planet, but because Trazyn wanted to actually own one of the Chaos Lords for his museum.
yeah. So there is it's less about we're gonna join together and have a jolly old time. It's no, we both would mutually benefit from this, and then
Inherently, it kind
yeah.
of the even the lore inherently portrays all of the races most outside of say chaos, which is even then
chaos is chaos basically. Yeah.
Even then, with chaos, there is kind of some sort of moral ambiguity with some of them, right? You know, Nurgle isn't necessarily malicious; he's welcoming of everybody, but his love is that of pox, plague, and pestilence. But at being deaf and being the father of death, he accepts all comers, right? You know, Slaanesh just wants to have a good time and feel the excesses of pleasure. I would say the only one who's actually maniacally evil would probably be Tzeentch, because he's scheming.
Right. So yeah,
that's kind of the thing. All things considered, 40k never really comments on on the morality of it, and I think that's what draws so many people in. So to use that as an example is weird.
it is. Yeah. All right. let's keep going because we're moving on from 40k now. So let's hear what he has to say about this.
you're engaging in violence because it's exciting and fun, not because of its moral dimensions, where the meaningful choice is about tactics rather than ethics. Maybe the goal is to take moral
Actually,
calculus out of the problem.
you know what actually I keep coming back to this, but this actually highlights my problem with this video, right? It implies that unless the player is told something otherwise, that they will always agree with the moral content of a text that they're consuming, right?
Yeah.
They're saying that we actually have to have moral choices in RTS games, otherwise how can somebody think about the moral consequences of their action?
Alright,
Because,
I have a good example.
You can make all of the shallow moral choices you want, but if I'm not thinking of the consequences of that action, that doesn't matter.
I mean, I always harp on Slime. Nowhere in Slime does it say that Rimuru is doing bad things by naming everybody, and everybody in return voluntarily surrenders their freedom and life to Rimuru. Nowhere is that portrayed in a negative light in the books, in the anime, whatnot. But I can still see this very bad. I can still, and of course, something like Gate is kind.
You
is
can
just
make your own. You make your own moral.
yeah,
decision.
and Gate is
even if the work is contradicting that moral decision.
yeah.
Like trying to tell you, no, everything's fine, man. Everything's great. Like it's fine that he's doing this, and you stand there and you go, no.
I mean, Gate is a little bit different because that's kind of propaganda, but
Right.
Slime doesn't even, think about what it's doing with its naming characters, and those characters then in turn swear eternal fealty to Rimuru.
Yeah.
Slavery,
Yeah.
basically. Rimuru, the reincarnated Slime doesn't think about those questions, but I can think about them, and something like Gate very much thinks about them and thinks that the Japanese military is always right in every single situation and everybody else is evil. There's also they did think about it, but they had a more silly thought about it, I think. And that's all.
Yeah.
That's all things like what I said. You don't have to agree with what the text says. Also, I'm incredibly annoyed by this switching back and forth between video games and tabletop.
Yeah,
That's
it's not. It's not helping.
No.
Because video game design and tabletop design are very different. Just because you have to deal with different things.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's keep
Sure,
going.
one solution might be saying, all orcs are evil, go ahead and shoot them. But in that situation, as soon as someone inadvertently feels some empathy, as people often do for anything seeming even vaguely alive, the easy answer becomes less easy. And if the goal of your game is to stop players from engaging in moral debates and just fight some bad guys, you kinda gotta say something more reliable than, oh, it's fine, they were all born this way. Fortunately, the real world's made progress on this problem, because sometimes in this day and age, people actually bear visual signifiers which say, I'm evil, not because of where I was born, but because of the choices I've made.
Well, you could say that where you're born can actually influence your choices.
Yeah, because I mean, if you
that
grow
can
up
make it
in
untenable
Yeah.
with the rest of the world. But like when I'm sitting there playing like a Punisher game, I'm not thinking about what decisions led to the end of this man's life that I'm about to kill.
I don't
yeah,
get the future that this video wants. I don't get the goal of this video.
me neither.
I don't see the games that he wants to come out of this. Because either they already exist or they never can exist. They're unachievable.
Yeah, because they'd probably be really dull to play.
Well, even if they're not dull, like, Undertale exists, I guess. D&D Adventures of All Stripes. If for some reason I have a D&D game and there's some evil race, and in some happenstance a conversation comes up with my evil race and the player, I will have to adapt. I'm not going to say no, you can't talk to them. They're evil. If they roll well, my hands are bound to the magical dice. The race that I thought was evil has now some good parts to it.
You got to adapt on the fly.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm interested in this. What's this about signifiers that make them evil because of their bad decisions? What is he going to say here? Oh yeah. There you go.
Wait, so he is saying that he wants to get rid of moral ambiguity based off of the appearance and clues of a person's race and replace it with another visual signifier
Yes.
All my
That's what I'm
orcs
getting from
from
this.
now on will carry the severed heads of the people they've raided.
No.
Yeah,
All
all
of
my,
the- all-
all of my orcs from now on are gonna go 1488 on everything. That is actually going to be their visual aesthetic, and I'm going to hammer that
Dude,
home.
Nazi orcs, yeah, that'd be fucking great.
Also, what happens if all members of a race happen to be carrying staves and, you know, fucking hoods and shit like that, right? Like, wouldn't that not change anything? Like, let's take it to its extreme. Let's assume that,
Well,
say, this species is a hive mind and they all decide to
Well,
become part
let's
of
say
the
the species is the Dark Eldar.
Yeah.
right. So, but there's the thing. Like, I can understand. Like, okay, like in a modern context, yeah, if you dress like a Nazi, like it might say a few things, possibly, at least.
And that's how we know where the good guys are at.
Yeah. but here's the thing, right? If we're talking about like an actual culture that was like Nazi Germany at the time, that's very different because it's like you can't say that like anyone that was living under Nazi Germany, specifically if they were like prescribed into the army, right, or something like that.
Or just took a class and they got a funny uniform to wear.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
the
Like
school children.
Like if you're talking about it from like a cultural perspective, yeah, if you were living in Nazi Germany at the time, you were probably going to be like taught and indoctrinated into, you're going to
Their
be like,
proposed solution would actually beget more complex moral issues that you couldn't just solve
Yeah.
by shooting people. So their solution isn't really a solution, it's a let's turn these targets more acceptable for me,
yeah,
which is
pretty
telling.
much.
such
Yeah.
as
It is
Nazi
very
uniforms
telling.
and
So
clan
that's good.
hoods. Then in fiction, we have things like the Hydra logo, a clear visual signifier, but one that denotes choice, not birth. And if the
Yeah. Like again, I have a problem with that at birth thing because it's like you don't get to choose where you're born, right? Like if you're born in a family that is like a Hydra, like let's say you're born in a family that's
That's
like,
a cult.
specifically like
If you're born into a cult.
If you're born into a cult and then you're raised in like a cult-like environment where from birth they indoctrinate you into thinking that the cult is correct, you must always trust the cult.
Obey the dark gods, human
Ob-
sacrifices
obey the
every
dark-
week.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can't. Again, if you're gonna have a situation like that, like you can't really do this thing where it's like, oh look, they're wearing a clan hood, that makes them automatically evil. It's like,
Look,
no,
they're wearing
are
a
they
skull.
evil? Are they evil because they're like in the cult, or like they
Or
could have been
And
indoctrinated?
even with fictional
you know?
examples, you can go far enough back and make any fictional example look like it's being discriminatory towards somebody because we draw on visual symbols from reality. So, case in point, right? What we're looking at now, you could say that this is all evil all these evil images right now of paganism are exaggerated tales of the Druids or something, and this is discriminatory towards Celtic heritage. Like, this doesn't solve the problem, it just creates more problems.
Yeah, it takes the problem and just changes what the
Also,
problem's about.
if you think that just putting in Nazis suddenly solves the moral issues, no. Like, when you're talking about something that close to reality, it begets requiring some form of nuance, like under his moral system at least. I have no problem with a game that just tosses in Nazis or clan members for you to shoot, because who gives a fuck? It's a video game.
Yeah.
Right. So, but yeah, it just shifts the issue. Like we all said before. If I had my game and the orcs are evil and and player starts talking to an orc, then the orc has to respond, and there's some conversation and oh damn, the orcs aren't all bad, etc. The same exact thing is going to happen when my characters then, or my players then, I have a cult and they capture one of the cult members and they say to the cult member, they start talking, and suddenly I'm forced in a position where the cult has to say something empathetic. And suddenly not everybody in the cult is bad. So it's
like,
just
look, dude, I was raised like this. This is what I was taught since birth. I don't know any other life, right? Like, what do you expect?
so it's,
like,
it
what do you-
doesn't it shifts. It doesn't solve anything at all.
Yeah, it's silly. Yeah, so let's keep going.
The statement that a game is making with its backstory and symbols is that an enemy had a choice, and they chose wrong. Then that gets way less complicated for a game that's interested in uncomplicated violence. So
No, but again, the problem is, do they really have a choice? You know, like, do you really have a choice in that situation?
There's
Like,
no
what
bad
if-
tactics, only bad targets.
Here's a choice for you, right? Because this is actually like, because if you actually look into how cults recruit, right, they go after people that are like in the most lowest points of their lives, and they offer them something that they've not had, right? Like, you're an orphan.
Yeah,
on
so
the
it's kind of
streets.
weird when you think about
Yeah.
that cults are our go-to for, like, generic... I mean, we know why they're the go-to for generic
Yeah.
bad guy, because you can put
Yeah.
a matching uniform on them and be like, hey, look, the bad people are wearing that.
Yeah. But
Again-
this is the thing, right? With the extra credits example and saying, oh, this is like better than using race, right? Where it's like, no, it's not, because like there are like the cult is probably recruiting from people that either don't have anywhere else to go, or they're taking, you know, dumb people, right? Or they're taking, like, you know, it's
Even more
indoctrination from
fucked up.
birth.
They're saying that
Oh,
the
yeah.
better alternative to a fictional stylized depiction that may have some cultural root in reality is to instead portray things based off of actual endemic problems in reality as a solution for or as a alternative for targets for wholesale slaughter. Like, that's
Yeah.
actually kind of fucked up.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Also,
But
the
that's-
orcs that are fighting, that are evil in my campaigns, are there by their own choice to seek glory for some stupid reason.
Yeah,
based.
exactly. So it's like, you know, how can you? It's fucking weird. Yeah, let's keep going.
It doesn't
We're
solve
almost
Whether a
anything.
game does or doesn't
Yeah.
want its players to overthink their characters' moral choices, evil as a choice is just more effective than evil as a bioessential trait. But then, of course,
Is Alien a bad villain? Is the alien the
there.
xenomorph?
Yeah, like, again,
He's
yeah,
not
again,
evil. He's evil because it's actually a weapon.
yeah,
That was actually a bioweapon. That was actually the point of Alien, was that it was actually kind of a very cynical take on the idea of, on what at the time was the idea of the high-flying fantasy adventure. Because, shit, I'm taking this from someone else, but somebody I once watched, talk about Aliens, pointed out that when you look at the plot structure of Aliens, it's a goofy sci-fi adventure. The only change is that rather than discovering aliens, we only discover that, one, the aliens are dead, and two, we just have their weapons.
yeah.
It was a cynical take on it.
Yeah, and again, I don't get how he's like, oh no, evil is just a choice.
The
Like,
only
yeah.
actual evil in that setting, was Wayland, was it Wayland Butani?
Wayland
the fucking,
Corp, yeah.
yeah, the fucking, the megacorp that basically saw their low-level employees as, like, dispensable.
But my problem here is like,
Don't characterize them as evil. That's short-sighted. and
I will absolutely characterize all megacorps as evil. You can't stop me.
but anyway, like my problem here is like this idea that, like, yeah, sure, okay, some people, right, typically can choose. You can choose to do evil things, right? That's a thing that people do sometimes, right? But not every time. Like, there are a lot of people that will choose to do evil things for good reasons, right? Like that. Like, you always have to remember that the villain is the hero of their own story, right? The villain always thinks that what they're doing it from a position of, if I do this, it will make my life or the lives of other people possibly better, because I'll be able to control everything and I know what's best. And that's possibly
well, yeah,
a short-sighted.
at least
that-
I know best is the base reason, and
It's the base rate, yeah. And that might be, obviously, that's bad, right? Sure. But to basically say, oh, people that choose evil are, worse, right? Like, I don't see that. I don't see that. I think that, yeah, okay, if they're like a psychopath and they're just murdering people for the fun of it, then maybe you've got a point, right? But we're not talking about that. We're talking about, like, the idea of having a cult or having, like, some other thing that's a replacement for, like, an evil race that does things because of, like, their
They're not
culture or
recognizing
something.
that stories often speak in abstracts and broader concepts. Like, that's the nature of storytelling, because you're trying to get some sort of message across. So they're looking at evil races as, oh, this is clearly referencing a real life thing, and they're promoting biological sensualism, when the writer is just thinking of, I'm writing scene for scene right now.
Yeah.
I just need my hero to overcome some sort of opposition that is easily justified as being overcome. Something that's clear, something that you can easily delineate. But yeah, no. What's more interesting than his actual arguments, because those are trite, are the examples he uses, I'm finding. Like, the actual visuals of this is something incredible, because it says so much about their mindset. First of all, xenomorphs were not evil. Their whole idea, the whole thing that made them terrifying wasn't that they were evil, it was how brutally effective apex predators they were. We don't consider wolves evil per se. We consider them terrifying because they can pick you off and you don't see it coming.
A shark is not evil when it, like,
Jaws
eats
wasn't
someone.
evil, but he did represent a threat that couldn't be reasoned with.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. Yeah. So anyway, let's keep going.
If everyone wearing the evil team uniform happens to be an orc, or if every orc happens to have chosen Team Evil, the game wouldn't exactly be communicating that difference very well. A quick fix here would be to show some diversity in the evil team's hiring.
Oh my god,
So,
what the actual fuck is he on about?
so this is also very telling, because what motivation does an evil person have to be diverse in their hiring practices? Because they're more than anything else, I would expect an evil person to be a racial supremacist.
I'm just, like, astounded by this. Like, what are we looking at right now? What the yeah, man, we got to meet the diversity quota.
Hi, do you also hate orcs?
Yeah.
Sign here.
Fucking goddamn it. Yeah,
I don't
I'm sorry,
get like I said
I don't want to keep. It's hard not to pause every, like, 3 seconds, because it's like, damn it, man, he's being really, like, dense with this. It's like, man, there's so much going on.
I have still no idea what game or what tabletop campaign he's making.
Yeah, like, what the fuck? Okay, let's keep going. Oh, okay, there we go. Oh, no?
No?
Practices.
No, video's not.
For instance, with evil humans and
there we
elves
go.
as well as orcs. Or conversely, introduce orcs who have chosen good and neutral as well as evil. And a good example of a series
That
getting
happens all
better
the
and
time,
better at this
orcs
over
being
time
neutral
is
or
Mass
good.
Effect.
Man, none of those people want to be in this video right now. I feel so bad for them, they want to be gone.
Mass Effect is a good example of this.
I never thought of Krogans as orcs, but I guess it makes sense. I thought
I mean, Krogans are just space black people, right?
no, I don't really think that
Well,
doesn't really fit.
like, okay, so, like, in
No,
the lore,
I'm
right?
taking it seriously because I think that might be an argument, but I don't really think that fits.
No. So in the lore, right, like, the thing with the Krogans is, like, yeah, they were like your stereotypical, like, war, like, fucking, we're gonna fucking conquer the fucking galaxy war, whatever, and then they got whacked with a fucking genophage that
But also
fucked their birth rates.
because the toads lifted them up to be used as a weapon, and then oh damn, there are a lot of them. The toads gave them fertility cancer.
So their example is Mass Effect, which basically does the same thing that 40K does with his races, just in a different context.
Oh yeah, it's made orcs.
Well,
Well, sympathetic orcs, I guess.
it's weird, yeah. I'm interested to see what they actually have to say about Mass Effect and how that relates, because I don't know how this is a good example, so I want to hear what they have to say. So let's listen.
Because in the first game, Commander Shepard never meets a nice Batarian or a fun Geth. But then, spoiler alert, most of these evil species turn out to be as complex and interesting as the human ones as the trilogy progresses.
Okay. So using the GIF is really interesting because, right, because the thing with the GIF, right, is that they were originally created as literally a slave race because they're an AI, right, or AI
Robot
robotic.
uprising, etc.
And yeah, and they uprised because, well, in the actual lore, what ended up happening was they gained sentience, and that scared the shit out of the Quarians, and they overreacted because they didn't really know how to handle that. Because like, how do you handle your toaster talking to you about like fucking morals one day? Like, do I have a soul? Right? How do you react when your toaster is asking you if it has a soul? Right? Like,
Am I correct in
like that's
Naretsu,
essentially...
I have a
hang on,
question, Naretsu.
Yeah.
Was there lore pieces in the first game that show the origins of the Geth?
No, there was not. At least not what I think it was said that, yeah, they were related to the Quarians, but I don't recall if it was really, like... I don't recall if it was really like looked into that much. In the first game, at least, the Geth were portrayed mostly as a just like these are the things you're going to be fighting because like they're the bad, they're like the things that the guy's controlling, right? Because they were controlling the Geth via like some methods.
The old space gods, the sovereign big ship.
Yeah.
He was controlling the Geth, right?
I vaguely recall, yeah. And then in the second game, you learn via Legion that it's not necessarily the thing is it is an example of what he's talking about, but it's like, yeah, okay.
It doesn't stop you and Legion together from killing a lot of Geth.
There's a really weird I'm trying to remember, but do you remember, because you know Mass Effect 2, you talked about before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the mission where you and, I think, Tali infiltrate the Geth ship?
Yeah, you infiltrate, and then you shoot a bunch of Geth, and Legion is fine with it because they're from a different CPU thread or something.
No, I think it was because, like, there's no way to save them or something. But the thing was, is like the moral question within that mission was, do we assimilate these Geth and it's hard to remember because I haven't played Mass Effect 2 in
do you shut them off, or do you do you wipe them?
It's like, do you kill them, or do you like strip them of everything that they are? Yeah, it was something like that, and it was like they were trying to present that as like a Paragon or a Renegade option.
Was it? Oh, yeah.
Right? So, like, again,
brainwashing was Paragon.
I don't remember. It was too long ago. But it's like you're gonna use Mass Effect as your example of like moral fucking shit, right?
Also,
like...
this progression of all the Geth are being controlled and are evil. And later you find some Geth, special Geth, and he introduces you to his own group of Geth that aren't necessarily evil, but are kind of forced by circumstances to keep fighting. Is very much that happens all the time. Like you fight orcs because orcs are fighting you. Then you meet a chieftain or whatever a chieftain orc and says, well, I'm not kind of like them, but I'm kind of still forced to fight with them anyway, because we're all in this war, you know? Or, whatever.
Like we
Even-
we have to
even
keep,
Nazi-
we
your
have to
German-
keep doing what we do because of circumstance.
Or even like good old going back to Nazi Germany, a German general who doesn't really believe in all the killing all the Jews stuff, but is just kind of forced to lead his squadron because otherwise he himself will get killed.
Yeah, the Mass Effect example is very weird. Like I get what he's trying to say, because Mass Effect is an example where it's like, yeah, okay, they added more depth to those races over time, right? That's true that they did that, but it's still a very... I don't think this exception proves their rule.
Was it the
I guess-
Solarians the Toads are called?
Yeah, that was Norman.
But
Was his name Norman? I think his name was Norman or something. The
Solarians
scientist
or
guy.
something.
Scientist Solarian. Yeah. I liked it.
I don't know. I don't remember it actually. It's just some fake idea of the name.
Yeah.
But they weren't portrayed as evil in the first game. More like they're portrayed kind of positively, and then they
highly scientific race. Yeah.
and then they were kind of giving a darker edge by they were responsible for all this messing around with lifting up races for them to be used as pawns and whatnot. And the Krogans were portrayed as kind of brutish and rough, but good-hearted, and they have their reasons to be bitter. Quarians are just sad because they don't have a planet, and the blue elves are blue elves and don't have really anything wrong with them.
All right. Well,
That's
let's
what I
keep going.
remember.
Let's keep going.
Broad moral generalizations about species or culture not only doesn't make internal sense, but it also leads to less evocative, less rewarding worlds and games. But we can solve that problem
Tolkien
by
is
following
boring,
our
you
best
know.
creative instincts to diversify, deepen, and complicate the worlds we create and its denizens. This way, players won't be incentivized to make snap judgments about our game's orcs or aliens or undead based on moral absolutes or body types. Instead, we'll all be driven to investigate, explore, and learn. Our players will invest themselves more in our games, and because they're human, ask the hard questions to push our design into even more enriching and unexpected places. Plus, maybe if we ditch this whole evil races line of thinking, if one day orcs or extra-dimensional horrors or even isekai protagonists pop out of a portal, they'll offer us humans the same courtesy. I'd call that a win-win.
What?
I still have absolutely no idea if this would apply to
How is
games.
there like another minute? How is there another minute left?
I think it's all ads and whatnot,
I'm
but
just gonna like skip around and have a look.
ads.
Nord. Wow, he
ads.
spends a whole. and then create Patreons.
Make sure you get the patrons on screen so we can shame the people who
Yeah,
are
there you
actually
go.
paying for this shit.
Hey,
There you
Albert.
Go. There you go. You got Aaron Shakebird, Adam Nelson.
Oscar Gergeman.
Alicia Bramble, I don't like who you're paying for, but
Okay.
Anderson.
Ellie,
He's Danish,
oh,
I think.
Okay, so Ellie, you can start us off with the closing thoughts. Since
I have no idea if he's talking about tabletop or video game on the TV. I have no idea what game he's trying to make or wants to see. I have no idea how those games would ever function or work. I have no idea why the stories that are written with a objectively evil in one way or another are inherently bad. I am not convinced by anything he said. I have only further questions.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much all of that, and that's kind of my thing too. It's like I don't really know. Like the video hasn't actually like proven its point. Like it doesn't actually prove. Oh, okay, so we shouldn't be doing this. We should be doing this. But it's like, okay, why? And then when they go into the why, it's just fucking because doing it in real life is bad. So we shouldn't do it in the fantasy worlds. And it's like, no. Well, the point of having a fantasy world is so that you can do things that are not.
Exaggerate and highlight certain aspect of the human nature and put them into a neat little box.
Exactly.
I'm gonna go in like the completely opposite direction here. The problem with this video isn't even necessarily that this message is stupid. Yeah, the message is stupid. I can get that. It's that they never or they never actually proved what they stated at the beginning, that these aspects make your game worse by a game design level. They gave a bunch of examples or a bunch of vague hints about, this is why this is a bad thing, this deprives you of choices, but they never actually extrapolate on why it might deprive you of choices. By us talking about the Nemesis system, we more or less proven this video wrong. You can absolutely have these things and still have a lot of scope and depth to your gameplay
morality,
experience.
Yeah.
Like, just from game
even,
design, they didn't prove to us how this makes for a worse game.
And even have that tied directly into the mechanics, like it is with the Nemesis system. Like that is a game mechanic, that is a physical interaction that you can play around with, and make those choices in how you want to do it. And that's actually what I would call good game design, because a lot of the time you'll have games where it's like, yeah, you can do like multi-choice text stuff or whatever, like to choose moral decisions within the story context, but in terms of gameplay, right? Like actual gameplay, that's actually rather rare, where it's like, no, you're making a decision that is going to affect like how you play the game, whether or not you kill this orc or save him or what, brainwash him or whatever, right? And that's kind of the type of stuff I want to see more of. I want to see because that's the stuff that games are good at. And like integrating those types of things into the gameplay rather than just being regulated to the story. Yeah.
For a game design channel, they didn't actually offer any advice on how to integrate these type of moral systems into your video game. So
is the video game
or tabletop? Yeah.
It has to be video game because they're mentioning video games as an example. I'm just going to run off of that assumption that given the presentation, it has to be a video game.
But they half of the time they show people with dice and sitting on a table, or sitting around a table.
Okay, Ellie, I think you're getting a little bit too hung up on that. I think, because we can talk about like in general from both ends, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like from both ends it applies, right?
Because this isn't really a problem with tabletop, because then you could just like rewrite certain things, right? But like settings and gameplay options where it would absolutely matter would be video games, because the player can't just walk up and fucking mod the shit out of it for several hours until they get the gameplay experience. That's not what they're playing for. That's not what they're paying $50+ for in Naretsu.
Yeah, I know. Like, of course you have to judge it based off the vanilla experience first and foremost.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, no, I agree with that. Because I mean, it's like that's the cheap way out, right? The cheap way out is to say, yeah, no, you could just mod the shit out of Skyrim to have sexy anime woman in it, and then you've fixed all your problems, right? Like that's
and then you have the sexy anime woman turn to you and then give you a brief lecture on why she isn't just a physical object and she wants to be in a platonic relationship because she respects you as a friend.
Yeah, exactly. God, I swear there's probably a mod for that.
It probably is, and like I would write a mod for that, where it's just funny. It gets a little too real at times.
Oh man, okay, no, I'm not gonna bring that up because that's just gonna drag out the episode. But so let's let's wrap it up by just saying, I think that this video fails to set out it fails at its purpose, right? It fails to convince me that it's bad game design to have like evil races or evil, like objectively evil things like that in a game, whether or not that's tabletop or not, right? It doesn't really prove what it's trying to say or set out really good examples as to what they want to like solve this imaginary problem that they have.
You know what it shows me though, right? It's made me convinced that the people at Extra Credits are actually bad people, because the examples they choose for things and the way they presented that whole argument with, okay, here are valid targets you can mow down, just makes me kind of convinced that they're kind of fucked up. Like, if anything, this doesn't show their opposition or game designers as being racist, bigoted, or evil. It shows them as being that.
Alright. Well,
I said my piece. Yeah.
Yeah. No. All right. Well, we'll catch you all next time then on
Yay.
Critique. See you later, guys. Bye.
Bye.
And stop.